I'm now live. Trying this out again, Instagram. I had a technical difficulty last time, but I'm trying to branch out and offer you some classes via Instagram too. So in about 10 minutes, I'm going to start a Yin While You're In class. I'm going to turn off comments, but I don't really understand how this works, so we'll see. Elder Millennial, what are you going to do? So hey, I'm Laura. I teach yoga in the Greater Toronto area. Nice to meet you. I'm going to start a Yin While You're In class in about 10 minutes. I'll give you a quick primer on what Yin is. Yin yoga is a slow style of yoga that's different than a lot of other styles. In Yin yoga, we're aiming to use as little effort as possible to access fascia, connective tissues, help out your bones and all those still stable parts of you in order to help them be more resilient when you go to move. So if you want to hop into this class, that's great. You just need a couple of blankets, a couple blocks, or books. Books work great as blocks, and access to a wall. So we're going to get started in about 10 minutes if you're into that. If you're not into that, totally cool. There's also live classes happening now. Like, I get it. It's all good. You got choices now. That's a great thing. So get started in just a minute. I'm going to pop onto my Facebook because I like simultaneously streaming, so you have lots of options on how to connect. That's pretty fun. And we'll get going here pretty soon. Oh, I tells you, it's a lot of change happening right now, which is like necessary, but it doesn't mean you don't have whiplash from time to time at the rate at which everything has literally changed. And for me, doing these live classes has been a big lesson in growth, which is, always comes in ways you don't expect. And this class tonight, I was inspired. Actually, I should say this in a second when I'm like done simultaneously screaming. Great, we're off to a great start. I'm so bad at multitasking because I've really developed myself to focus on one thing at a time. That's been good for meditation. But sometimes when I multitask, I just can't do both at the same time, which is okay. So, while I get all of that going, welcome to Yin While You're In. Welcome to Yin While You're In. My name's Laura, if this is the first time. I'm here to guide you through your little bit longer practice tonight. I think this class is about 75 minutes, so To get set up, you will need blocks. If you don't have blocks, go ahead and grab a stack of books, works really well. You can also grab some blankets and set yourself up close to a wall. So I've got lots of wall space here, so we're going to use that for a couple poses. So Yin While You're In. So Yin Yoga is a relatively new style of yoga. It started in the 1980s. And while the practice of yoga, especially Hatha yoga, can date back for thousands of years, a lot of the styles that we practice now are from the 19th century. So, 20th century, 20th century. I get confused because 1999, but anyways. A lot of the other styles of yoga we've practiced kind of cropped up in the early 1900s as well as the 1950s, but Yin Yoga came up in the 1980s, so it's relatively new. And Yin Yoga is different than a lot of different styles of yoga. One, because it's more based in Taoism, which is a different philosophy, while a lot of modern yoga stems from Hinduism. Taoism, some refer to it as a philosophy, some refer to it as a religion. I only know it based on the context of Yin Yoga, but not an expert in religion or philosophy, just an enthusiast. But Yin comes from this Taoist language. And what is Yin? Well, there's two specific energies in Taoism. It comes through in a few other Eastern philosophies, but there's this idea of yin and yang. So if you've ever seen a yin-yang symbol, and some people say yang, but that's an Anglicism, and Chinese is pronounced yang, and I'm sure my Chinese pronunciation is not great. But if you see that circle, you notice half of it's black and half of it's white, and the white half, the squiggly half, there's a black dot, and in the black space, there's a white dot. And this represents that in for every action, there's inaction, and there's inaction and action and action and inaction. And that our minds like to really separate things out as like, this is this thing, this is that thing, nary the two shall meet. But we all know life is a lot more complicated than that. So what the Taoists presume is that there were different energies that were the underlying principle of life. So what Taoism aims to do is, instead of giving you a bunch of rules like, don't, if you do this, then you're a good person. If you don't do this, you're a bad person. If you do this, you're a bad person. If you don't do this, you're a good person. What Taoism says is that everyone is on their unique path, and in order to live their best and most least suffering life, the best thing you can do is work with the Tao, work with the natural flow of the universe. And that's not the kind of mentally constructed flow of the universe that we get into in a lot of New Age philosophy. Like, the universe is like, it's a personified entity outside of me, and it sends me signals. More Taoism is like, you can't name the Tao, you can't see the Tao. As soon as you try to define it, it has escaped you, but it's this underlying life that carries through all of existence. So if you want to learn how to live your life to the best degree, the best thing you can do is contemplate nature. That is a very glossed over, blurry watercolor, like a really watered down version of some of the essences of the Tao. But you can see this kind of crop up in Yin Yoga, because the alignment in this practice, the way you know you're doing poses correctly, you're not going to be able to tell by looking at it from the outside in. You've got to follow that inner Tao, inner Tao is kind of a dumb thing to say, but that inner guide that you have to notice if you're achieving sensation in the target area, and I'll say a bunch of different target areas, and nothing totally counts as a sensation. There is a sensation of nothing inherent in all sensation. And not by have your chin exactly parallel to the front of your mat. That won't help you to access your inner energy. So that's a little primer on Yin Yoga. It doesn't look like you're moving a lot in Yin Yoga. We do hold poses anywhere from 3 to 20 minutes. Some poses are even shorter than 3 minutes. But they resemble aesthetically a lot of their Hatha Yoga counterparts, their Yang counterparts, more active counterparts. But what you're trying to do here is relax as deeply as you can into the poses. Use as little effort as possible. Don't try to force or push yourself into anything, because the minute you try to force and push, you're back into the Yang energy, you're back into effort. So you want to minimize that. There's going to be a little bit of effort in anything that you do, but you want to find that relaxed state in what you're doing. Paul Grilly, one of the grandfathers of this style of yoga, has a really great analogy. And what he talks about is that yin tissues, the relaxed, sturdy, stable tissues, the ones that are not actively moving, like bones, ligaments, tendons, those tissues benefit most from yin style exercise. And what does he mean by that? Well, he says that if you wanted to strengthen your teeth, you wouldn't go in your mouth, and you can see videos of him saying this, you wouldn't go in your mouth and take each tooth and wiggle it for 10 reps 3 times. Because then you'd have a bunch of loose teeth, because you're applying yang effort to a yin tissue. Kind of interesting, right? So instead, what you would do is you would create a sturdy structure. You would hold those yin tissues in place. You'd find compression, and that would benefit them. So you put in a retainer. You'd put in braces. That is the way to strengthen and bond yin immobile tissue in this modality. So that's your primer for yin yoga. What time are we at? We got 2 minutes, cool. I'm feeling chatty today. I haven't seen many other people other than my partner for quite some time, so this is a good thing. So in today's class, what we're exploring is the wood element. And I'll tell you a little story before we get started. So when this morning I went out for a walk. I don't normally tell stories about myself, but strange times. This morning I went for a walk, and when I was out for a walk in the area that I'm social distancing in, there's a little forest nearby. And in that forest, there's been a bunch of trees cut down because the ash trees in the area have all gotten a parasite, and they're dying. So you can just see these cut trees everywhere and the stumps of where they used to be. And so I got to be really curious about when stumps are in the ground, like, do they automatically die or do they live? Really, how does that work? And what I learned is that stumps, if they're living, if the tree's still alive, they'll actually burrow underground and start connecting to other trees. And I thought that was a really beautiful metaphor for what we're all kind of going through right now. So a lot of us, or at least I'll speak for myself, for me, I felt really cut off really suddenly from a lot of things that helped bring me ease or supported me financially or, normal shit I used to do in my life. And I've been so focused on, at least in the first 2 weeks, on kind of regaining, that stuff I've been cut off from, and finding ways to connect with friends, feeling a little bit fearful about a lot of different things, which I think is normal. And I find myself coming back to this idea of when am I going to get back to normal, right? And that expectation, I think it's natural, but what I realized was I'm missing a big opportunity for growth. Even though trees that get cut off, they can't grow branches or reach up into the sky, they still build these networks underground. So instead of trying to force myself to grow in ways that I might have been able to grow in 4 weeks ago, I think it's good to remind myself that just because I'm looking at a place where there's resistance, just because I'm looking at that place, that's going to be the only thing I see. But if I allow myself to get some perspective and look around, I might see other opportunities for growth. And when I say growth, I don't mean being productive. I don't mean setting records. I don't mean kind of this self-improvement idea that you need to be something different than what you are. But what I mean by growth is an ability to grow a deeper connection with who you are, what you're here to do, and what path you want to take in life. And that's not going to be one size fits all. So with that being said, let's start to practice. Come to a comfortable seat. That might be up on a blanket to elevate your pelvis higher than your knees. We're going to start this class a little bit differently in seated meditation. Crossing one ankle in front of the other. This is Sukhasana, or easy pose. Take good care not to crisscross applesauce here because your ankles might get uncomfortable. We're going to be here for some time. And then from here, rolling your shoulders up, back, and down. The crown of your head, the top of your head extends up towards the ceiling. Bring one hand to your low back, your other hand to your low belly. And then notice if your spine is arching here, or if you're rounding out, can you find that nice middle space so your pelvis is nice and neutral? Allow your eyelids to relax, or better yet, close your eyes completely. And then without changing anything, can you notice your breath? Can you start to notice all the little sensations that happen when you breathe? You might feel the rise and fall of your chest. Or notice the feeling of cool air tickling the back of your throat. Just notice. as you notice the movement of your breath. Can you start to notice the parts of your body that are connecting into the ground? You might notice your hips, your legs, sides of your feet. With every exhalation here, can you imagine those places of your body burrowing roots into the ground? With every inhale, maybe you can sit just a little taller without straining. Exhaling, pelvis and legs get heavy. Inhaling, crown reaches up. Stay with that. Can you start to imagine yourself here as a tree stump? Your roots, these grounded parts of your body, burrowing deep into the floor. With every inhalation, can you start to feel the capacity of your lungs? Sides of your ribs, your belly, your chest. Maybe you feel breath move up and into your back. Every inhale, noticing your trunk. Every exhale, noticing the weight of your pelvis and legs relaxing into the floor. On your next inhalation, gather your hands into heart center. You might press your palms into each other for Anjali Mudra, the gesture of the soul. Or if that feels inappropriate, allow your index, middle, and ring fingers to splay apart for Lotus Mudra. As you connect your thumbs right up into your heartbeat, can you let your mind get so quiet that you might even hear it? Listening fully to your heart, can you ask it this question? How can I grow in my practice today? Pause for a breath. Listen for your heart's answer. If your heart answered your question, allow its answer to become your intention, a guiding force throughout our time together. But if nothing came through, dedicate this time to growing through stillness. As you exhale, bow your head to your hands, sealing in this request. Release your fingertips down by your sides, blink your eyes open. From here, start to extend your your legs really wide to the side. No need to force your legs super wide open. Just find that spot where you feel a little bit of sensation in your adductors, your upper inner thighs. That's our primary sensation here. If this creates any burning behind the back of your knees, take one of your blankets, fold it vertically in half, so the top corners are folded in towards each other, and then fold the top edges to the bottom, in particular above my blanket rolls. And then from here, start to roll up your blanket like it's a little yin yoga burrito. And then slide that roll underneath your knees. Do the same thing for the other sides. Your other blanket's rolled up and it's sliding under your knees. I'm sitting on my other blanket. You might sit up on some blocks here, especially if you've noticed your low back rounding, or you can stay up on them if you were there for meditation. You can stay upright here with time, or not if you're expecting. You might start to fold forward through your legs as you soften into dragonfly pose, If you suffer from migraine headaches or have a lot of head and neck tension, it might feel better to do this pose against the wall. So sliding your hips really close to the wall, bring your hands back behind you, and allow gravity to widen your ankles wider than your hips any amount. Using your first 5 or so breaths to make any little adjustments you need to in order to feel productively uncomfortable being still. It's really tempting in these yin yoga shapes to want to force yourself to your absolute limit. Can you back off to 60% of what's uncomfortable for you to do in this shape? As we continue to hold this pose over the next 5 minutes, whatever sensation you begin with is likely to grow with time. Give yourself a little bit of breathing room. Here for 5 minutes. Enjoy. changing anything? Can you notice what's stopping you from going deeper? Is it an external limit, like the floor or a prop? Is it the compression of your bones bumping into each other? Is it muscular tension? Or something more subtle, like a thought or an emotion? Your answer doesn't matter. What matters is this experience of observation that's noticed. Where you're planted, what's containing you. If you've hinged forward at the hips, as you exhale, draw your belly button up and in to support your back. As you inhale, slowly crawl yourself back to upright, or if you've done legs up the wall variation, roll to one side. As you release this shape, engage in any movements that feel nice to fully erode it from your body. There's no wrong way to move here. Take your time. And then as you're ready, we'll set up for your next shape. If you're expecting, it might be prudent, well, it will be prudent, to prop up your chest and underneath your hips. You might use 2 blankets, but depending on how far along you are, you might need something a bit more sturdy, like a bolster or some pillows. But if none of those things are available to you, sit in a comfortable seated position and you can follow my little tasks that I'm going to give you. Otherwise, come down to lying on your belly. You can have your feet mat width distance apart here or big toes touching. One will feel better than the other depending on the shape of your sacrum, that large flat triangular bone at the base of your spine. Really nothing to do with how flexible you are. You're looking for compression or pressure in your lumbar spine. That's your low back. For some people, it'll be enough to place your palms underneath your forehead. For some people, you might prop yourself up on your forearms here. Generally speaking, the closer your forearms, your elbows are to the front of your chest, the more intense the compression. So if it's too much, you can slide your hands a little further forward. If you suffer from migraine headaches or have a lot of head and neck tension, place a block or a stack of books underneath your forehead and allow it to rest there. Taking your first few minutes here, or first breaths, rather, to make any little adjustments you need to in order to feel productively uncomfortable being still. We're here for 3 minutes. If at any time you experience pain, which is lightning, shooting, electrical sensations, pins and needles, sharp sensations, anything that takes your breath away or that just doesn't feel safe, stop what you're doing and exit the pose. Pain is never a part of yoga. Discomfort is definitely a part of yoga, but pain isn't. It means you're doing damage. Respect that limit. If you feel invited here to go deeper, if you don't have much sensation in your low back, you might decide to prop yourself up into Sphinx or slide your hands towards the outer corners of your mat. Actively press down into your palms as you lift yourself up to seal pose. If this is too much, no need to stay here. You can always come back a half step or two. And you start to notice all of the effort present in this lack of effort. As much as you're relaxing, you might be pressing into your hands to keep yourself upright. You might be slightly engaging a muscle to avoid pain or keep yourself safe. Just notice. As you're ready, no rush, slowly start to release this shape in favor of any little movements that feel nice, to fully release it from your body. That might be pressing up and back into a little child's pose at the back of your mat. That might be engaging in some cycles of cat-cow. It might just be sitting and watching those sensations pop up within you. As you begin to move, start to notice any sensations of blood or circulation that arose out of the compression, the pressure we created in your low back. as you're ready, we'll set up for our next shape. Have a blanket nearby in case you need it. From here, bring your right shin towards the top edge of your mat. Leave your left knee bent and behind you. Depending on your bone structure, not your flexibility, this might create some funky pinching sensations at the top of your left hip. If that's the case, take a blanket underneath your left knee to change the angle of your femur or your thigh bone. You can have your right leg super parallel to the top edge of your mat, or depending on your knee today, how it feels, it might feel better to bring your heel a little closer in towards your groin. You can stay upright here, which I would recommend if you're expecting. Or now, with time, maybe never, you might start to fold forward over your thigh, your shin, or towards your foot to find a stretch, some sensation on your outer right hip. That's gluteus medius, the outer side of your hip. The alignment in yin yoga isn't external or aesthetic. What's above ground doesn't matter as much as what's lying underneath. Prioritize creating that sensation in your outer right hip, even if sensation is nothing, over forcing yourself into how you think the shape should look. Trees in nature aren't so concerned of whether they're oaks, pine, fir, or ash. They all look different to the eye, but their leaves still take in light. Their roots still pull up water. Their branches still bow to the wind. Their sap still flows beneath the surface. Can you root your pose in your experience instead of from your expectations? We're here for 2 minutes. If you're in a good place, you can stay just as you are. If it feels better or more expansive, you might decide to extend your back leg, your left leg towards straight as you enter into sleeping swan. It doesn't matter whether you've transitioned into sleeping swan or not. What matters is this process of discernment, this process of choice. Acting from the sensations that your body is giving you, instead of from the expectation created in your mind. as you're ready, no rush. Starting to release this shape in favor of any movements that feel good. To let it go from your memory. And those 3 minutes, they might feel like you've aged to be about 600 years old, but that might just be from the purposeful strain we've put on your tissues to help them to come back a little stronger. Most likely will go away with a couple minutes of movement. And then when you're ready, no rush if you're not, bringing your left shin towards the top edge of your mat, with your foot either really close to your groin or really parallel, depending on what's comfortable. Knee can be down on the floor or up on a blanket if that helps to reduce any discomfort in the top of your hip. Staying upright here if you're expecting or if it just feels nice. Now, with time or never, starting to fold forward over thigh, shin, or foot to find a stretch in your outer left hip. In this pose, you're stimulating your liver meridian. Its line of energy runs from your big toe all the way up the inner sides of your leg, up to your torso, where it branches out into your diaphragm all the way to your eyes and your lips. Your liver meridian is often associated with feelings of frustration, creativity, rage, anger, and inspiration. It's associated with the Taoist element of wood. Can you imagine here as you succumb to this formless shape? That with every exhalation, you're letting go of anything that is causing you to suffer. Starting to let go of any unnecessary efforts. You might relax your jaw, unclench your fists, relax the space between your eyebrows. You might start little exercises might prompt you to access and undo tension from your mind and your emotions. As you move into sleeping, head here, you feel it starting to broaden and soften. Even when you're stuck, there's room to grow. Can you explore that in your body? About 5 more breaths. As you inhale, slowly start to grow out of this shape. Engage in any movements that feel nice as you start to transition yourself to lying on your back. Now, I'm not going to show you this pose lying on my back, or else you won't be able to see a thing, but from lying on your back, extend your arms up and overhead. You might decide to grab opposite elbows here. That can feel nice, but if your elbows don't touch the ground, leave your hands down by your sides. Our primary stretch is in our legs here, so what your arms are doing, just let that be comfortable. You don't want to stress out your shoulders. We'll be here for a bit. As you exhale, start to drop your right shoulder down towards your right hip as you walk your feet over towards the right corner of your mat. So I'm in a standing side bend, but you're doing this action on your back. You might stay just like this, especially if you feel a stretch on your outer left leg. That's your IT band. Or you might decide to cross left ankle over right to increase that sensation along your outer left leg. If you feel discomfort in your low back, it might help by making this little sushi roll with your blanket and sliding it underneath your low back to give your lumbar spine a little bit more support. We're here for 5 minutes. At around this time in this shape, you might start to experience warm, tearing sensations. Similar sensations to receiving a really intense massage. This might be an indication of your fascia or your connective tissue starting to become mobilized and released. Instead of drifting away from this sensation, can you allow it to keep you grounded in this moment? And maybe even get curious as to what lies underneath it. What depths of sensation can you find underneath the layers of your skin? As you inhale, slowly slide yourself back to center. As you exhale, left shoulder slides down towards left hip as feet walk towards left side of your mat. Staying here or crossing right ankle on top of left to help you access a stretch in your outer right leg. In more active or yang styles of yoga, this shape is sometimes referred to as blowing palm. Close your eyes. Can you imagine a palm tree starting to sway in the wind? Notice how its leaves start to ripple. Notice how its trunk bends and allows the force to pass through it. Can you notice how the softness, how the flexibility of your imaginary palm tree keeps it upright and strong? Can you notice how because it yields, it doesn't break, and it lives to grow a little bit taller once the storm has passed? Can you access deeper layers of this tension, noticing where your thinking is stuck? Notice where your emotions have stagnated. Can you imagine the wind of your breath starting to soften and bend those places? Can you imagine your thinking getting more flexible with the force that it's under? On your next inhalation, slowly start to bring yourself back to center. Uncross your legs, engage in any movements that feel nice to fully release that shape from your body. There is no wrong way to move, so take your time. Water break. And then, as you're ready, and if you're not ready, I can't see you, so there's no rush. Slowly starting to make your way